Hey, hi guys. Sorry for the interruption. Like students are facing some technical issues while joining the link on Zoom. So if you guys also face any issues while joining, we have also redirected the event on our YouTube channel, so you can also watch it over there. So without wasting any further time, let's get started for today's session. So before we get started, let's discuss what galvanizes and what we do. As mentioned, like we change lives, we help students for pursuing their higher degrees abroad. We help with end-to-end personalized solution for students and working profession who are aspiring to pursue a global degree abroad. We help with personalized test preparations for SAT, GRE, TOEFL. We also lead the admission counseling for bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees abroad. We help with education loan assistance and other pre-departure services. The team is managed and founded by alumni of Stanford, IIT Madras, and IIM Ahmedabad. Up next, six students from 65 plus countries have chosen Galvanize for their degree abroad journeys. You can see the countries in the alphabetical order. We have had 1000 plus, we have helped students to reach 1000 plus universities across 18 plus countries. Like we help students to reach to US, UK, Canada, you name the country, and we are ready to help you over there. We have a worldwide database of around 1 million plus users from 195 plus countries with a global rating of 4.7 out of 5 on both Play Store and App Store, as well as on our Google. So meet your host. We have Ms. Rutu Parna today, who is a GRE and TOEFL Master Trainer at ETS India. With over 7 years of experience in education and training, she has worked with several organizations. Currently, she is a training assistant manager at ETS India and oversees the training vertical and ensure high standards in her program. Her expertise lies in TOEFL and GRE preparation. She is dedicated to helping trainers and students like you to achieve your dream score and the best university admit. So without wasting any time, let's hand over the mic to Rutuparna.
Thank you, Sahil. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to this session today, which is going to be on TOEFL IBT reading and listening sections. So I will give you the overview of both the sections first, and then towards the end, we can take up any questions that you have. A basic expectation from the beginning of the training is that let's all try and keep the section engaging, right? Ask the right questions, and I'll be happy to answer all of them. So let me share my screen.
Sorry to interrupt, Rutuparna. Like, still, if you are facing any issues on Zoom, you can also watch this video live on our YouTube channel. You can post the questions on the YouTube channel as well, and we will take it up from there and post it on our Zoom link where Rutuparna can answer it. Thank you.
Sure. So we'll start with a little bit of basic information about the TOEFL IBT first. So you know that we're accepted in 13,000 plus institutions in over 160 plus countries. We're accepted in 100% of Canadian and US universities. Now we are accepted by all, accepted by Australian and New Zealand universities as well. So there is a bit of a development in that sense. Now, there are two modes to the test. You can take the test at a test center. You can also take it at home. But if you ask me as a trainer, I would always suggest any test taker to take the test, any kind of test, not just TOEFL IBT. Take the test at a test center so that, the seriousness is there and that laid back attitude isn't there, right? You can get your scores in as less as 7 to 8 days. It doesn't take much time. So what is the TOEFL IBT exactly? It is an English proficiency test, right? It measures your ability to communicate by combining all four language skills, which are reading, listening, speaking, and writing. It is academically focused, and it measures proficiency as it is used in academic settings. So the context or the kind of questions that you see in the TOEFL IBT tests are always academically focused. They're all, set up inside a university, or they're all campus based. It never goes beyond that kind of setting, right? we provide fair and objective scoring because scores or tests are not scored at test centers. Tests are scored at centralized scoring networks. And the crucial speaking section does not involve any human grader. So that cuts off the factor of nervousness that, many test takers may find in themselves, right? So that's something that you have to understand. Now, coming to the overview of the test, which is a must before we dive into the section, because we want to make sure that all of you have a clear idea about what all the test consist of and how to, ace each of those sections and what is the kind of duration that is allotted for each and every section and what is the kind of scoring that we have. So we have 4 skills that are tested in the TOEFL IBT, like we have already established. The first section is reading. Then you will be writing the listening section, then speaking, and then writing. Please remember that the order of the sections always remain the same. So what do we get in the reading section? We get 2 reading passages with 10 questions based on each passage, right? That means a test taker has to answer a total of 20 questions in 35 minutes. 35 minutes is the duration that is allotted to the reading section, right? Now, similarly, in the listening section, you get a mix of audios, right? You get lectures and you get conversations. Now, you get 3 lectures with 6 questions based on each lecture. That means you will have a total of 18 questions based on lectures. And you get 2 conversations with 5 questions based on each conversation. So a total of 10 questions are based on conversations, right? So if you assemble both the numbers, then you have a total question number of 28, which you have to answer in 36 minutes. So speaking and writing has independent task and integrated task. Speaking has 4 questions, writing has 2 questions, but that's not something that our focus is on in today's session. So I'm gonna leave it at that, right? So if you can see the scoring, then you know that each and every section ranges from 0 to 30. 0 being the lowest and 30 being the highest, which makes up for the total score of TOEFL IBT as 120. There is no negative marking in the TOEFL, and there is no pass or fail score or a passing or a failing score. So it all depends on what university or college you're applying to and what is the cutoff there, right? Now, as and when we move forward and dive deep into the different sections, you'll be able to understand that reading and listening sections are very, very similar in terms of the questions that are tested, because both reading and listening are receptive skills, right? Where we receive the information and we try to make sense of it, and then it helps us answer the questions, correct? And in both reading and listening, the stages that the questions are framed according to are going to be the same, all right? Now, as and when we move forward, like I said, keep asking your questions. If I see that any question is relatable or relevant at a particular time in the session, I will definitely answer those questions. Now, before we move forward in the reading section, please tell me what kind of reading skills are needed in an academic environment. You can post your answers in the chat box. Any ideas what kind of reading skills? Just think of yourself in a classroom, right? Your professor is going to start a new chapter, right? What will be the first question in your head, right? That what are we going to read about, correct? Now, that exactly is what basic comprehension is, right? Which gives you an idea or a gist or an outline about what is it that you're actually going to read in the session. Now, when you do start reading the article or the passage or whatever it is you're dealing with, you start reading for specific informations, the who, the why, the how, everything and anything around that, right? So remember, these are all specific purpose questions or specific purpose informations. Now, after that, you do something else. You do something which requires analyzing, which requires reading between the lines, which is nothing but reading for details, right? Now, the three stages that we talked about are reading for basic comprehension, which is the what is this reading about? Next is reading for specific information, which includes all the whys and the hows and the when, etc. And then the third stage is reading for details or reading for inference, which requires analyzing and which requires reading between the lines, which requires the test taker to understand what is the suggested meaning or the implied meaning. So almost always you'll see that the answers for inference questions are never really explicitly stated in the text. That's something you have to find out after analyzing a little bit more about the author's tone. All right. Great. Now, what are the kind of texts that you will get in the reading section? You will get expository passages, you'll get narrative passages, you'll get argumentative passages as well. Expository passages will expose you to a lot of information. These passages will be factually loaded. Similarly, narrative passages will narrate a sequence of events or an order of events to you, and an argumentative passage always forces the reader to take a stand. Now, all these information in all these kind of passages are also based or framed according to certain patterns like compare and contrast, like problem and solution, like cause and effect, etc. So you will always see the passages being or the passages following a certain pattern, by understanding which you will be able to better locate your answer. All right. Now, like I said, you will get two reading passages. Each reading passage is going to be about 700 words long, which is a lot of words. But don't worry, these passages are divided into 5 or 6 paragraphs almost always and are followed by 10 questions for each passage. Just give me a second. So these passages are followed by 10 questions, right? Most questions are worth 1 point, but the last question in each set is worth 2 points. When I say most questions, I mean question number 1 to question number 9. All the questions will be worth 1 point, but the last question in each set, as in both the reading passages, will be worth 2 points. All right, and that question itself carries partial scoring. I will explain how the partial scoring works in just a while. Before that, I would like all of you to take a look at the question types in the reading section, all right? And the question types are divided into 3 categories, as we have already discussed. Now, the categories are basic comprehension, inference, and reading to learn. So under basic comprehension, we have 4 questions, which are vocabulary, sentence simplification, fact, and negative fact questions. Vocabulary questions will always ask the test taker to find out the contextual meaning of a word. The second one is called a sentence simplification question. Now, this question always assesses the test taker's ability to understand whether or understand which one is the most accurate paraphrase of a given sentence that is highlighted in the paragraph. A factual question will always ask the test taker to find a fact from the given options, a fact that is supported or backed by what is given in the passage. That means that option should have proof in the passage. And the next one is a negative factual question, which works just the opposite of a factual question. That means here in this question, the test taker will be asked to find out a non-fact from the given options, any option that doesn't have any kind of relevance or any proof in the passage. Now, when we go to an inference question, under inference, we have three questions. First one is a general content inference question. Second one is a rhetorical purpose question. A rhetorical purpose question always asks the test taker about the author's motive or the author's tone as to why did the author say this is like where, right? Or why did the author use this example? Why did the author say that? So what was basically the author's motive behind this example or behind this claim or whatever it is, right? And next you have an insert text question, which is also a inference question. It requires the test taker to also understand coherence and place a statement that you'll be given at a particular place or at a particular stage where the coherence remains the same or the transition remains the same. Now, the last question in each set is going to be prose-summary question, right? Which comes under reading to learn category. Now, this prose-summary question, as the name suggests, will ask the test taker to find out three options, right? Which basically the summary of the entire passage, right? I will tell you about prose-summary question in a little while, but here you have some of those questions that we spoke about. It's very important to understand the task of the question. Only then you will be able to understand which question follows what kind of approach. So very, very important to understand what kind of a question am I answering. Now we will start with understanding question types. So first of all, we will start with basic comprehension questions, which has 4 questions, right? Vocabulary, sentence simplification, factual, and negative question. So here you go with a vocabulary question. I'll give you some time. Let me know your answers in the chat box, and then of course we are going to discuss this question as well. Any answers? Do we have any answers for the questions? All right, anyway, so the question says, second. Okay, so the question says the word locomotion in the passage is closest in meaning to what? Correct? Okay, there is one answer from Raghu, evolution and lose the ability to move. All right. So locomotion in the passage is closest in meaning to what? So basically, how has this word locomotion been used in the passage? Correct? Now the sentence says, in the animal world, the task of moving about is fulfilled in many ways. For some animals, locomotion is accomplished by changes in body shape. Now, if you see the transition from the first sentence to the second sentence, you can very clearly tell that locomotion is nothing but the task of moving about. So if that is the phrase we are looking for, don't you think it is going to match with movement and not evolution? Also, you have the root word motion in there. right? And motion will always be associated with movement. So the answer here is going to be movement. Now, the second one says some poisonous snake bites need to be treated immediately or the victim will suffer paralysis. So here, suffer paralysis basically means losing the ability to move, which is what happens when when somebody gets paralyzed, correct? So this is how you answer vocabulary questions. Now, next one is a factual information question. You can take some time here and tell me what you think is the answer. Now, remember how to do this question. You'll take a look at all the options, 4 options. Out of these 4 options, one option will have a clear proof in the passage, and that one is going to be your answer. So follow this approach and tell me what is the answer. Okay, I have an answer from Priya. Amazing, that's correct. Yes. Am I expecting some more responses? All right, great. So here the correct answer will be option B. They found a way to strengthen the statues internally, and you can very clearly see that the last sentence of this passage has this very explicitly stated, right? And that is why it is going to be the answer. The next one is a negative factual question. Like I said, it just works the backward of a factual question. So here, out of the 4 options, you have to look for that option which is not been mentioned anywhere in the passage. That means the other 3 options will have proof in the passage, or they will have been spoken about somewhere or the other, right? So as you can see, the correct answer is option A here, because the passage talks about the function and everything else, but the specific instructions or the techniques that are used in their construction is not really been spoken about, which is why option A becomes the correct answer. I'll give you some time to take a look at the passage so that you understand what a negative factual question is. So there's one more thing I wanted to tell you, that all of us have kind of understood that the passages are going to be about 700 words long, right? But do we have to read the entire passage at once? Not really, because each and every question will have a certain reference, and that reference will be the paragraph number, which will easily help you as to where to locate that answer from. For example, question number 1 will say a paragraph 1, why does the author say this, or what does this word mean? That means you know that, okay, I just need to deal with paragraph 1 for now, and this is where I can locate my answer from. So what we are doing is we're not dealing with the passage entirely at once, rather we are just dealing with the passage 1 paragraph at a time, which is much easier, right? In terms of understanding the passage, understanding the gist, as well as the specific informations as well. Moving on, this is a sentence simplification question. What happens here is you will have a sentence in a certain paragraph, which will be in boldface, right? Boldface is which will be in bold basically. Now, what does this question ask you? This question asks you to find out the most accurate paraphrase of this given sentence in the paragraph. Now, what is a paraphrase, right? For that, we need to understand what paraphrase is. Any idea what is a paraphrase? Paraphrase is nothing but a restatement, right? Saying the same things in a different way without really changing the meaning of it, even slightly. Even slight change in meaning will not be considered as the apt answer. So it's like saying Ram killed Ravan, but I can paraphrase it and say it as Ravan was killed by Ram, where the meaning remains the same, but the way you say it changes. All right. So I would want you to find out the answer for this question, and please look at the question stem also. It is very important to understand question stems. How is this question framed? The question will always start with which of the following best expresses the essential information in the bolded sentence. Incorrect answer choices change the meaning in important ways or leave out essential information. So you will sometimes find options which will leave out some of the information and keep some of the information. So those are not going to be exact or apt answers, right? You will sometimes see options which will tweak some of the words, which will change the entire narrative or meaning of the bolded sentence. That's also not something that we are going to choose as the correct answer. We are going to choose the accurate paraphrase of the given sentence. All right. So take your time and tell me what you think is the answer. Am I expecting any answers, Priya, Raghu? Initially, when you do these questions, it may take you a little time, but remember to go slow in the beginning. Do not be overwhelmed that, oh, I'm not able to do this, right? You will get a hang of it if you are slow in the beginning and try to understand the different nuances of the questions and the, language of the passage. Very well. That is the answer, Priya. Yes, option A is going to be the answer. It cannot be option B because option B says the function of applied art objects is determined by basic patterns in the laws of physics. It is too broad, right? We don't know that. Option C is like the opposite, right? It's like a 180-degree option, and option D is completely irrelevant. So always try and focus on the elimination part, right? Try and make sure that you don't go to the options thinking, oh, which could be my answer. Always try and remove the bad options first. So what that will do is that will make your correct option pop out, right? And it's going to be easy for you to choose from 2 options rather than from 4 options. Now, I'm going to show you a prose summary question. You do not have to do this. I'm just going to show you what a prose summary question looks like and reiterate the information on scoring as well. Please remember that while question number 1 to question number 9, all the questions will have 4 options. This question will have 6 options. And a test taker is always supposed to find out 3 correct options. So the prose summary question always has 3 correct options. Now, how does the partial scoring work for this question? So partial credit will be used for scoring this question type. Test takers can receive scores of 0 to 2 points. If they select only one correct answer, they will receive 0 points. If they select 2 correct answers, then they will receive 1 point. And if they select all 3 correct answers, then they will receive 2 points for this question. That is how the partial scoring works. But remember, there is no negative marking per se. Moving on to an inference question. For that, we need to understand what inference is, right? Inference is something that is true according to a given context. It's almost like concluding, but basing it on the context, not concluding or interpreting something going beyond the scope of the passage, which is not true, right? So for inference questions, always ask yourself the right questions and you will get the right answer, right? You will be asked to infer about something in the question, right? So ask yourself, what do I know about this thing from the passage? Once you have that, you can then ask, what is the next possible thing that I can guess about this thing from the passage? But always base it on the passage and not on your interpretation. So here you go with an inference question. Tell me, what do you think is the answer here? Take your time, it's no problem. Any answers?
So there is Priya who have answered as B, and Deepak has answered as A. Raj
All
again
right.
YouTube has answered as D.
All right. Great. The great efforts, you guys, but none of those are the answers. I'll tell you how to do this question. So the question asks, which of the following can be inferred from paragraph 1? About candles, before the 19th century. Now, what are you asked to infer about in the question? You're asked to infer about candles before the 19th century. Now, let's look at the passage. The passage says, the 19th century brought with it a burst of new discoveries and inventions that revolutionized the candle industry and made lighting available to all. So this one talks about what happens in or after the 19th century. We have no proof of what happened before the 19th century. So that's why what we are going to guess is that maybe before the 19th century, it was not available to all, which is what is going to match with option C. It cannot be option A. Why? Because it says they did not smoke when they were burned. Well, they did smoke, which is why they produced a rancid odor or a bad odor, right? So this option is totally opposite. Same with the next option. The next option says they produced a pleasant odor. They did not produce a pleasant odor. They produced a rancid odor. And that is why we cannot take this as the answer at all. And the last one is completely irrelevant. They contain sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid was just, a thing that was involved in the process to develop and refine tallow. So this nowhere comes close to, what we are looking for as the answer to this question. So here the answer will be option C. Next one is a rhetorical purpose question, which will always start with why does the author say this or say that, right? So here I would want you to go through the passage and answer this or try to understand this as to why does the author introduce this claim. Now, what is the claim about? That if a pot has no bottom or large openings in its sides, it could hardly be considered a container in any traditional sense. So take your time, try to answer this question. After this, we have one more question to go, and then I think we can take up any questions that you may have. Any idea what the answer will be here? Okay, we have an answer.
So Priya has answered C. Then Dhanashri E has answered A. Deepak has answered C again. Okay, and Priya has changed her mind and changed her answer to B. So yeah.
All right, so here the answer will be option B. Actually, the author introduced this claim about pots with no bottoms or large openings to illustrate an example of applied art objects that do not adhere to the constraints imposed by the laws of physics, right? It'll not be A because cultural beliefs is not something that we are bothered about. So that is something which is a little irrelevant knowledge. And option C cannot be the answer because the passage supports the idea that the laws of physics determine the general form of applied art objects rather than arbitrary decisions. All right. Here we have the last question, which is the insert text question. So what happens in an insert text question is you will be given a sentence, right? A sentence which is nowhere there in the passage. And you will be given 4 square boxes in one of the paragraphs, just like the one you see here. Now, your job is to find out this sentence will best fit in which one of these 4 square boxes so that the coherence or the transition between paragraphs as well as sentences remains the same. And it makes sense to, place this word or place this sentence at this particular square box according to you. For example, the sentence that you're given here is that all 3 of them have strengths and weaknesses, but none adequately answers all of the questions the paintings present. Now remember to read through the passage very slowly, or the paragraph which has the 4 square boxes very slowly. Only then you will get an idea about where to place the sentence. So the para says scholars offer 3 related but different opinions about this puzzle. One opinion is that the paintings were a record of the seasonal migrations made by herds. Because some paintings were made directly over others, obliterating them, it is probable that a painting's value ended with the migration it pictured. Unfortunately, this explanation fails to explain the hidden locations unless the migrations were celebrated with secret ceremonies. If you look at these options, or if you look at these sentences, starting from one opinion, these are all evidences or some kind of explanation, right? But the sentence that you're given here to fit is more likely a claim or a conclusion, right? Which makes sense only in the first paragraph. So once you put all 3 of them have strengths and weaknesses, after that what happens is the author starts explaining about these strengths and weaknesses. So it makes sense to put this sentence in the first square box, which will be the answer here. All right. So with that, I think, pretty much done with the reading section. And I hope that you have understood and gotten a bit of an idea about how each and every question works. So if you have any questions, please ask me. I'll wait for a minute for your questions in the chat. If not, then we can move ahead with the listening section. Any questions? No questions, I hope. All right, moving on with the listening section then. Like I told you, listening is also going to be pretty much similar in terms of the question that are asked, because listening also happens in those 3 stages. Listening for basic comprehension, like to understand what someone is talking about. Then listening for specific information to understand, okay, the who's and the why's and the when. And then based on speaker's intonation, sometimes we...
Sorry to interrupt, Rutu Parna. There are a couple of questions which have come in.
All right.
First question is, just give me a minute. How can I improve my reading speed for the TOEFL?
By reading a lot, by being consistent with the reading. Well, like I said, you don't need to focus on the reading speed. Rather, what you have to do is, when you look at the questions first, it helps you. Never go from the passage to the questions. Always come from the question to the passage. Because like I said, the questions will follow the order of the passage, right? So once you're dealing with question 1, That means at the same time, you're dealing with paragraph 1 as well. So once you're reading paragraph 1 and trying to find out the answer for question 1, do that. But along with that, try to find out the most important sentence or like the gist sentence of that particular paragraph. So just like that, by the time you reach the last paragraph, you will have a gist sentence from each and every paragraph, which will be about 5 and 6 in number. Now that will help you in eliminating the options in the prose summary question. So this is going to be a very good approach. Yeah. Next question, Sahil.
Yeah, like both the question mean the same. I guess they are like asking, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, okay. Just give me a minute. So they are asking like, how can I handle the detailed questions and like, how can I understand the meaning of the passage? Like, what should I focus on?
Focus on the question, always come from the question to the passage. Know what you are looking for. So for that, understanding the task of the question becomes very important. Like I did an inference question in very extensively with you. Ask yourself the right questions. What am I asked about in the question, and what do I know about this thing from the passage? Right? So ask yourself the right questions and you'll be in the right path to get the answer.
And there's one more question. Sorry, but I can't.
No problem. No, please.
Are the questions in TOEFL reading section in order?
Yes, they're in order.
Okay.
Yes.
That's it.
That's
That's
it?
it. I can continue with the listening section.
All right. So we were talking about the listening section and how you will find the questions to be similar to the reading section as well, because here also you'll get gist question, you'll get specific purpose questions, you'll also get inference questions. Now remember that inference questions in the listening section are always based on the speaker's intonation, right? What is intonation? Intonation is voice modulation. Now what if you're not able to see me? Now you can see me, of course, so you can read my expressions. But let's just say for a fact that you're not able to see me and I'm telling something to you. So there are so many things that we can infer. Something that happens to us when we are chatting with our friends. Oh, he told me this in that particular way. Do we really know that? Not really, because we haven't heard his tone, right? Um, so based on the intonation, you will have to understand, again, based on the context, you will have to answer a few questions about the author's tone, what exactly the author meant, right? So you cannot base it on your interpretation, you always have to base it on the context. Now, I told you that you get two types of audios in the listening section. You get academic lectures and you get informal campus conversation. These lectures are going to be very formal in nature, and the approximate length of these lectures are going to be about 5 minutes long in an average. 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 seconds, 5 minutes, 30, 5 minutes, 10 seconds, like that. And each of these lectures are going to be followed by 6 questions each. Now, lectures initially will be boring to you because you will have a lot of abstract concept being explained to you. And the most important thing, most a funny reason why lectures are boring is because they are formal. Because we as people are never interested in a formal thing. We are always interested in informal settings, right? Which is why you will find conversations to be much easier than lectures. A, because they are formal. Two, because they are shorter in nature. Where lectures are about 5 minutes long, conversations are going to be about 3 minutes long. That means we have less information to consume. And these conversations are going to be followed by 5 questions each, right? Remember that in lecture, the first question is always going to be a gist content question. A gist content question is always a what question. That means the question will ask you, what is this lecture all about? Similarly, the first question in a conversation is going to be a gist purpose question. Now remember that purpose is like a smaller part of the content, right? So gist purpose is a why question, something that will ask you, why does the student go to meet so and so person, right? When it comes to conversations, conversations can be discussions with professors, like where a student goes to a professor to talk about his academics. It can be service encounters as well. What is service encounters? A student going to meet the in charge of so and so department to seek some sort of a service, like a librarian, a student talking to a transportation department in charge, or a student talking to a foreign student advisor. Now, lectures can be monologues. Lectures can also be interactive lectures as well. When it's a monologue, you'll only find the professor to be the speaker. Only the professor will be speaking throughout. When it's an interactive lecture, you'll find the professor talking along with a couple of more students contributing to the same lecture, asking a few questions here and there. So in the listening section, it's very important that we actively listen to the audio wherever it is required, and we also take notes wherever it is required, right? We cannot be focused on one thing, because if we focus on one, then we miss out on the other. So these are two things which are very, very important in the listening section to retain that information, because we are talking about 18 around 18 minutes of listening time and consuming information. So no matter how much you think that, okay, I'll be able to manage, it doesn't really happen. Only when you take notes, you're going to make sure that, okay, I have everything that I need to be able to answer the questions, and now I'm ready to answer the questions. So note taking is important and very, very important, and it's a must. What else could be a major challenge in the listening section? Accents, understanding certain words. Now, to deal with this challenge, what do we have to do? We have to start hearing, right? These accents in different podcasts or videos, or we have to maybe start watching shows on these accents so that we can get a hang of it. It's like saying, if I ask you to differentiate between an American accent and a British accent right now in the session, you will be able to do that in a second. That's because you have heard these accents so much that you're very familiar with them. But at the same time, if I ask you to differentiate between a New Zealand accent and an Australian accent, you may not be able to do that as easily, because we don't watch these many shows about these accents, or maybe we are not very familiar with these accents because we have not heard these accents much, right? So start hearing different podcasts and different movies on these accents, and you'll get a hang of it. So these were the common challenges. Now, in the listening section, very important to take notes. Like I've told you, this is a sample template of the outlining method using which you can take notes. And this is what it follows, right? Major point first, you'll always find the main idea being delivered in the first 30 seconds or maximum 1 minute of the audio that starts playing. After that, you can start expecting the supporting details and everything else, right? These are the question types in the listening section. Take a quick look at it, and after that, I'm going to go ahead and play a lecture, and I'm going to show you some questions. Once we are done answering those questions, I'm also going to play a conversation just to give you a feel of what level of lectures and conversations we are looking at in the actual TOEFL IBT. All right, I hope all of you have taken a look at this question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a lecture, and I'm going to put myself on off. So here you go.
So that's how elephants use infrasound. Now let's talk about the other end of the acoustical spectrum, sound that's too high for humans to hear, ultrasound. Ultrasound is used by many animals that detect, and some of them send out, very high frequency sounds. So what's a good example? Yes, Carol?
Well, bats. Since they're all blind, bats have to use sound for, to keep from flying into things.
That's echolocation. Echolocation is pretty self-explanatory, using echoes, reflected sound waves, to locate things. As Carol said, bats use it for navigation and orientation. And what else? Mike?
Well, finding food is always important. And I guess not becoming food for other animals.
Right, on both counts. Avoiding other predators and locating prey, typically insects that fly around at night. Now, before I go on, let me just respond to something Carol was saying. This idea that bats are blind. Actually, there are some species of bats, the ones that don't use echolocation, that do rely on their vision for navigation. But it is true that for many bats, their vision is too weak to count on. Okay, so quick summary of how echolocation works. The bat emits these ultrasonic pulses, very high-pitched sound waves that we can't hear. And then they analyze the echoes, how the waves bounce back. Here, let me finish this diagram I started before class. So the bat sends out these pulses, very focused bursts of sound, and echoes bounce back. You know, I don't think I need to draw on the echoes. Your reading assignment for the next class, it has a diagram that shows this very clearly. So anyway, as I was saying, by analyzing these echoes, the bat can determine, say, if there's a wall in a cave that it needs to avoid, and how far away it is. Another thing it uses ultrasound to detect is the size and shape of objects. For example, one echo they'd quickly identify is the one they associate with a moth, which is common prey for a bat, particularly a moth beating its wings. However, moths happen to have a major advantage over most other insects. They can detect ultrasound. This means that when a bat approaches, the moth can detect the bat's presence, so it has time to escape to safety, or else they can just remain motionless, since when they stop beating their wings, they'd be much harder for the bat to distinguish from, a leaf or some other object. Now, we've tended to underestimate just how sophisticated the abilities of animals that use ultrasound are. In fact, we kind of assumed that they were filtering a lot out, the way a sophisticated radar system can ignore echoes from stationary objects on the ground. Radar does this to remove ground clutter, information about hills or buildings that it doesn't need. But bats, we thought they were filtering out this kind of information because they simply couldn't analyze it. But it looks as if we were wrong. Recently, there was this experiment with trees and a specific species of bats, a bat called the lesser spear-nosed bat. Now, a tree should be a huge acoustical challenge for a bat, right? I mean, it's got all kinds of surfaces with different shapes and angles. So, well, the echoes from a tree are going to be a mass of chaotic acoustic reflections, right? Not like the echo from a moth. So we thought for a long time that bats stopped their evaluation at simply, that's a tree. Yet it turns out that bats, or at least this particular species, can not only tell that it's a tree, but can also distinguish between, say, a pine tree and a deciduous tree, like a maple or an oak tree, just by their leaves. And when I say leaves, I mean pine needles, too. Any ideas on how it would know that?
Well, like with the moth, could it be their shape?
You're on the right track. It's actually the echo off all the leaves as a whole that matters. Now, think. A pine tree with all those little densely packed needles, those produce a large number of faint reflections in what's called a smooth echo. The waveform is very even. But an oak, which has fewer but bigger leaves with stronger reflections, produces a jagged waveform, or what we call a rough echo. And these bats can distinguish between the two, and not just with trees, but with any echo that comes in a smooth or rough shape.
All right, now that you have heard the lecture,
So that
here you go with the first question. Can you tell me what the answer is going to be? The first question is always going to be a gist content question. Like I said, this question is asking what is the lecture mainly about? The answer here is option B, all right? How bats use acoustic signals. All the other options are specific options, right? You may have seen that, okay, we have talked about ultrasonic pauses, we have talked about ultrasound, but yes, we have, but those were a part of the lecture, not the entirety of the lecture, right? Similarly, this is a specific purpose question. Why does the professor decide not to add more information to the diagram on the board? So remember that some questions will rely on note-taking skills and some questions will rely on how actively you have heard the audio or the lecture, all right? So here the answer is going to be option D, because students already have that additional information in their textbook. Now, this question asks you to select two answers, but remember that such questions will not carry any partial scoring. That means only when you come up with the two correct answers, you'll be marked for the question, otherwise you'll not be marked. So according to the professor, what are the two ways in which a moth might react when it detects the presence of a bat? The options are option A and option C. These are very specific and factual questions from the lecture. So, you'll get a mix of factual questions, you'll get a mix of gist questions, and like I said, you'll also get an inference question. So one of the questions in the lecture section will always require you to hear a short part of the lecture again to answer a question. So here, why does the professor say?
now before I go on, let me just respond to something Carol was saying.
Why do you think the professor says this? I'll wait for this answer. Any idea?
Now before I go on, let me just respond to something Carol was saying.
All right.
Now before I go on, let me just respond to something Carol was saying.
The answer here is going to be option B, all right? So it may seem like option A could be the answer, option D could be the answer, but you have to understand that these are all trap answers, right? Only when if you have taken notes, you will be able to answer these questions properly. Now that we are done with the lecture, let me play a conversation for you, and I'll also show you the types of questions in the conversation section as well.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a university employee.
Hi, I'm a little lost. Is this the housing maintenance office?
You found it. How can I help you?
Oh, good. I have a quick question. Are we allowed to keep electric heaters in our rooms?
Actually, you're not. What's going on? Your room cold?
It's freezing in my room. I think the heat went out or something.
Are you sure it's out? Maybe it just got turned down too far.
Oh, no. I tried adjusting the heat control, but it doesn't make any difference. It's so cold in my bedroom, I can't sleep at night. I've actually been sleeping on the sofa in the front room. The heat still works in there. Actually, we get hot air in all the bedrooms except ours.
Wow. Do you have a roommate?
Yeah, but she says she isn't bothered by the cold. But on the sofa, I'm kept up by the noise out in the hall. The dorms can sometimes get pretty noisy. So what can be done about it?
Well, okay. There's a couple of things we can do. I can have a custodian take a look at it and see if he can do something.
Actually, I asked the custodian yesterday to take a look, but he said he couldn't find anything wrong. He said that some of the other rooms have lost heat also, and that if we'd come here, you guys would fix it.
Oh, he did? That's weird because I would have... Well, the custodians themselves are usually supposed to report any problems right away. Okay, in that case, then what you need to do is... Here, fill out this form.
I have to fill out a form?
Yeah, but at least that'll put your heater problem in a work order for the maintenance crew, and they'll get to you as soon as possible. Just so you know, because it's not winter yet, and it's not as cold as it could be, it may take a few days for a maintenance crew to get to you.
A few days? I can't even sleep in my own room. Can't we just get an electric heater?
I'm sorry, but students just aren't allowed. Okay, I can see that this is a problem, and not just with your room. So, if you can get the form back to me this afternoon, I'll try to get a maintenance crew to look at your problem by tomorrow. How's that?
Oh, that would be great. Seriously. I have to take off now, but when I fill this form out, I give it to you, right?
Right. And if I'm not here, just put it in my box and I'll get it.
All right, so here you go with a just purpose question which asks you, why does the student go to meet the man? Now, here the answer will be obviously A, because she goes ahead and asks if she's supposed to use an electric heater, which comes under university policy, right? Second is, how has the woman been dealing with her problem? Very easy. She's sleeping in another room in her building. Third, what does the man imply about the custodian? Whenever you have the word imply or infer, understand that it's an inference question. So here, what does the man say when she says that I had reported it to the custodian and he said that it's a problem which is happening in everybody's room? So he sort of misguided her, right? So that means it is going to match with option B, that the custodian did not follow correct procedures. Fourth question says, why does the man mention winter? Very clear and very factual. The man says that it's not cold or it's not winter yet, so it's not as cold as it should be, which is why it may take some time for the technicians to come, right? So it's going to match with option D. And the last one is, what will the man do to help the woman? So what does the man tell the woman at the end? That here's the form, you have to fill it out and then give it to me, right? So he will send a maintenance team to her room soon based on her form, right? So that is going to be the answer. So great. I think with that, we are pretty much done. Oh, I am pretty much done with my side of the presentation. And I am open to take any questions that you may have. So please shoot your questions. Sahil, do we have any questions from the YouTube thing?
Yeah, Rutu Parna, I'm just looking into it. Just give me a minute.
Yeah, sure. Take your time.
The first question is like, what should I do if I don't understand a part of the listening? This is from Gokul.
Don't think about it. Just focus on whatever is playing from then.
Next question is again that same person is asking, how can I handle the long listening passages?
Again, like I said, please go slow, especially when you're in your preparation phase. It doesn't have to be a TOEFL reading question. You can just listen to any lecture or any conversation, any, part of an excerpt again and again and try to, retain that information. Try to recall whatever information you heard in there. That is what should happen in the practice phase. Once you gain that confidence, you'll be able to, do note taking and you'll be able to remember. But the real practice has to be done, especially when you're preparing, not in the test, right? So go slow, try to anticipate questions, try to, listen to random conversations or random lectures and try to recall whatever information you can gather from that, right? So yeah, it has to be a consistent practice.
2, 3 repeated questions are regarding the time management for the listening section.
Time management for listening section. So for listening, you get 36 minutes. And so what happens is first the recording is played and then you are going to see the questions, right? To be fast in answering the questions, you cannot be you may miss out answering the questions that may come after or that are coming after, right? So take about 30 seconds per each question and you'll be good to go.
That's it, I guess. No more questions on YouTube. Is there any questions here on Zoom? Like Priya, Dhanushri would like to ask and get the doubts clarified. I can also unmute you if you raise your hand, so you can ask your questions directly to Rutu Parna.
Yeah. Okay, I think Dharanish has a question. Do I need to focus on improving vocabulary or is everyday conversational words are enough? Well, Dharanish, TOEFL tests you on basic vocabulary. It's not GRE that, you'll need to prepare for vocabulary separately. So I would say no. But if you really want to prepare vocabulary separately, it's a good thing and it will help you. But without that also, you're going to be just fine in the TOEFL IB test because it tests you on very basic vocabulary. So yeah. Any other question, guys?
That's it, I guess. We can wrap. So thanks, guys. Thanks for joining today's session on TOEFL about reading and listening section. On next Saturday, that is on 21st of December, we have another important session on GRE verbal. So I request everyone to attend that session also. And next time we'll make sure we don't find any Zoom glitch. So you can directly join on Zoom and watch the session over here. So until then, thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day ahead. Thanks, Rutu Parna, for the wonderful session.
Thank you, Sahil. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.